Good evening. It's 9 p.m. on this day, the 11th of June, and you're right in time for our news broadcast tonight. It's also Tuesday, and Sidebar is lined up for you straight after this because right here on NTV, news and facts come first. The reigning hashtag for tonight is NTV Tonight. We have all the stories making headlines nationally and internationally for you. Here are the headlines.
Tonight, this train has one conductor. SGR firm Africa Star Railway Operation Company declares it's fully Chinese-owned. And from the tea farms in Nandi to the courts in Kisumu, Nandi Governor Stephen Sang now a free man but with questions.
Katiba ya Kenya mpya iliondoa maneno ya orders from above. Huyu above ni nani?
Plus,
go and listen to the people at Kiboko. Hear their story.
Senate demands comprehensive report on Kiboko oil spill as residents decry contamination.
That is not the reality. Of course, they are just denying liability.
Also tonight, sorry, you do not have sufficient funds.
I'm only asking for Caesar to be given what is Caesar's.
Former governor now wants telcos to give life to expired bundles.
NTV Tonight with Ken Mijungu.
A very, very good evening and welcome to our broadcast. My co-pilot tonight is Flora Atieno. And we begin with what has been termed as the biggest infrastructure project in the country, which could end up being one of the biggest scams that the taxpayers will have to keep digging deeper to finance. The China Road and Bridge Corporation has now outrightly denied reports in a recent investigations by the Sunday Nation of a secret agreement with the Chinese allowing a mystery company with their non-local shareholders to run the standard gauge railways. Mark Masai reports that the taxpayer will be forced to step in and meet hefty operations and maintenance costs for the SGR.
An overview of the standard gauge railway would leave one impressed just at the look of things. But it emerges there are many questions hovering over this 327 billion shilling project. A latest report by the Sunday Nation reveals that beyond the SGR deal that is shrouded in secrecy, there's a special purpose operating company that has local minority shareholders that would benefit from the maintenance and operating costs of the SGR at the expense of the taxpayer. The report cites the company Africa Star Railway Operation Company Limited that has majority holding by CRBC but with other mysterious shareholders who are locals. Sources at the Transport Ministry revealed to the Nation Media Group team that just hours before the launch of the Madaraka Express by President Uhuru Kenyatta on 1st June 2017, a secret contract was signed at White Sands Hotel in Mombasa, giving operational services to the Africa Star Railway Operation Company Limited, and Kenya Railway Corporation was then represented by former MD Atanas Maina, who has since been suspended over corruption charges. The China Road and Bridge Corporation has today responded to these revelations, claiming full ownership of the Africa Star Railway Operation Company and disputing any local shareholders being part of the operation and maintenance arrangement. According to sources at the Transport Ministry, Kenya Railways is already facing a 30 billion shilling bill from the Africa Star Railway Operation Company as pending payment from the operational costs so far. This is all besides the assurance from the Kenyan government and the People's Republic of China that none of the country's assets would be mortgaged in the event of a default.
None of Kenya's national assets has been mortgaged for the SGR loan. Neither would any single Kenyan national assets be seized nor controlled by China, even if, a very big if, okay, in a situation of default.
The taxpayer would only hope and pray that the Madaraka Express, or Independence Express if you may, will not lead the nation into dependence. Mark Masai, NTV.
Right, let's take you to the county of Nandi, where the governor, Stephen Sang, says no amount of intimidation will stop him from constructing a cattle dip on the disputed tea farmland that landed him in court today. The governor, who was released on a cash bail of 500,000 shillings, vowed to go on with the building of the structures as soon as tomorrow. Okukusa with that report.
9:40 a.m. and the embattled Nandi County Governor Stephen Sang walked into the crammed courtroom number 1 at the Kisumu Law Court. Moments later, Chief Magistrate Julius Ngarngar followed.
I will not be in a position to take this plea in view of my relationship with the accused. So I'll defer it to the duty court.
And with that, the governor was whisked away and arraigned before the Kisumu Senior Resident Magistrate Beryl Omolo. Omolo will later adjourn the proceedings after listening to the defense and the prosecution's submissions.
That the issues raised are weighty and will require this court to consider them with great precision. I will therefore write and give my directions at 3 o'clock today.
While the defense team demanded for the unconditional release of the accused, citing a stay order obtained from the High Court in Eldoret, restraining the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, the Inspector General of Police, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and the Attorney General's office from arresting and prosecuting the accused, the state, on the other hand, wanted the court to have Sang take a plea on the 3 charges preferred against him, which included malicious damage to property, incitement to violence, and abuse of office. But Lady Luck seemed not to smile on the governor when the magistrate ruled that he answers to the 3 charges.
So the accused person, having entered a plea of not guilty on the 3 counts of the charges facing him, I direct that the accused may be released on bond terms of Kenya shillings 1 million with a surety of a similar amount, or cash bail of Kenya shillings 500,000 shillings.
Sang was arrested yesterday for invading and destroying tea belonging to Kibwari Tea Estate on claims that it was public utility land. The farm is associated with former cabinet minister Henry Kosgei.
Mimi naenda kuendelea kujenga cattle dip within the next 1 month. Within the next 1 month tutakuwa na cattle dip ambayo wananchi wataendelea kusaidika.
All this happened even as the Council of Governors condemned the arrest of Governor Sang, demanding that the rule of law and justice prevails in resolving the matter to allow the county boss resume his duties. Okukusa, NTV.
And in Parliament, the Senate's Committee on Energy has given the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority 1 week to present a comprehensive report on the disastrous oil leak in Kiboko, that's in Makueni County. The oil leak was detected on the 30th of March, but Kenya Pipeline maintains that the spillage had not reached Kiboko River, a claim disputed by the residents. Zainab Ismail now reports that a split within the multi-sectoral team set up to establish if the water was contaminated or not has now thrown in the spanner into the works.
Residents of Kiboko in Makueni County will have to wait longer before utilizing water from the Kiboko stream as investigations continue to assess whether the oil leak from the 51 billion shillings pipeline from Mombasa to Nairobi had caused contamination. A weekly sampling test conducted every Tuesday at the 5 Kiboko water points by a multi-sectoral team comprising of the Water Resources Authority, Makueni County Government, NEMA, KPC and the Kiboko Water Resources Users Association has been left in limbo after the Makueni County Government and the Kiboko Water Resources Users Association withdrew from the process. The association's chairman, Wilson Manguti, told NTV that the process used to select the sampling companies was skewed to favor KPC. Manguti says the association will on Friday sit with the county government of Makueni to chart a way forward and push for a different company to conduct the sampling. While appearing before the Senate's Energy Committee, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority was hard-pressed to explain why no action had been taken against Kenya Pipeline Corporation following the oil spill in Kiboko.
The other 20% for technicalities, you can do it in another 3 months. But the 80% that people are suffering, how many people might have died, you know, how many animals are affected, how much of the area is affected, what the kind of effect, vegetation, all these kind of things.
We'll try to give you a report within a week. Just our own report, not a team report.
And
to
to
the
us,
Senate.
because we believe there looks to be some evidence of negligence or failure of somebody's responsibility, do not hesitate to recommend who.
The Energy Authority CEO Pavelo Emeke was also put to task over why he had not toured the area after reports of the spill emerged and how KPC managed to continue operations without a key leak detection system. The committee now wants a report on the incident in 1 week. In the meantime, residents say they want the process of determining the extent of the oil spillage done as soon as possible.
The water has been flowing. There is a lot of fuel kwa sababu uko chini mimea imekauka na hata kuna fish ponds.
We have not received any information about any resident affected directly, but like we have indicated, we have established where the extent of the spread, and we are trying together with other stakeholders to ensure that we do the sampling beyond that point.
Zinabi Smile, NTV.
And still in Parliament, with less than 48 hours to the tabling of the country's 2.7 trillion shilling budget, it's becoming more evident that the clamour and fight for bigger allocations is now the new norm in almost all the three arms of the government. The judiciary, parliament and executive have all called for increased allocations to their expenditure for the next financial year, but with some experts now warning that that culture could erode the country's spending and lead to more borrowing, as NTV's Silas Apollo now reports.
I have further proposed wide-ranging cuts in spending as well as austerity measures across all arms of government.
As stand President Uhuru Kenyatta then giving a directive to all the three arms of government to cut the spending just minutes after he slashed the proposed VAT on fuel by half. Kenyatta said the directive was to help the government cap its spending and the country's growing expenditure, a position he had supported a few months earlier.
I fully support the recommendations of Sarah Sarem that have cut the salaries of all public officers from the president all the way down.
But just months into that announcement, little seemed to have been done if proposals on the expenditure by the various arms of government seeking funds for the next financial year are anything to go by. Take for instance the proposal by the judiciary for 2.1 billion shillings financing to help in the purchase of cars, among other things. While it is not in doubt that the judiciary has in the past admitted to facing budgetary constraints, especially after MPs slashed their allocation, some critics are now of the opinion that some of the proposals made sound outrageous. This is not to forget the decision by MPs to award themselves 250,000 shillings each as house allowances, a move that could see the taxpayer dig deeper into their pockets to finance.
We are greedy people, so there's a bit of greed, and of course the other aspect is the whole issue about corruption. I mean, the Auditor General was talking about even budgeted corruption.
In this year, all the three arms of government are set to receive increased allocations, according to documents by the Treasury. In the proposals, the judiciary will be the biggest winner, with its allocation expected to increase by 21% from the 14.8 billion shillings it received this year to 17.9 billion shillings in the next year. The executive, which includes the office of the president, his deputy and ministries, will receive 1.8 trillion shillings, up from 1.7 trillion shillings it received this year. Parliament, on the other hand, will receive 38.5 billion shillings, up from 36.8 billion shillings. And while the increment may have been necessitated by other factors, it is the misappropriation that comes with it, which has caused a lot of concern.
Maybe work very hard to try and change the culture of the Kenyans. Because there's nothing you can do when you put members of parliament who have the same culture, they are going to arm twist you.
Silas Apollo, NTV.
Well, 2.7 trillion shillings, the highest in history. The tragedy is we have to borrow to plug in a possible and imminent deficit, then borrow to pay what we use to plug in that deficit, and the cycle continues. Let's move on. 3 people, including a 4-year-old boy who survived a gun attack after a man sprayed them with bullets in Elgeyo Marakwet County, are stable and recuperating at Iten County Referral Hospital. Now, the 3 survived after a man identified as David Kipkorir, alias Yano, stormed his in-laws' home and killed the 3 children aged between 4 years and 8 instantly. His former wife says there was an argument with the man he had separated with after a year in marriage. Police are hunting down the suspect who used an AK-47 rifle, which they say he illegally acquired before he opened fire on his family.
Hiyo saa 6 akakuja na bunduki kufika watoto wao kwa nyumba. Akapiga bunduki kupitia kwa mlango. Hao 3 walikufa. Moja ni msichana ya huyo dada yetu, alafu 2 ni wa nyumbani.
Let's take you to court now. And former Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero's lawyers failed to question the second prosecution witness in the graft case against him. This is after they requested for more time to go through documentations presented in court before cross-examination. Prosecution claims the application was made in bad faith as disclosure of all documents had been made during pre-trial. Presiding Magistrate Douglas Ogot said many applications by the defense are delaying the trial. The case will proceed tomorrow morning. And 32 witnesses are set to testify in the ongoing Monica Kimani murder trial against Joseph Irungu and TV journalist Jackie Maribe. Prosecution says 4 of the witnesses are protected while 5 are experts. The 2 are jointly charged with the 29-year-old's murder on the 19th of September at her apartment in Kilimani. The 2 have since denied the killing. The trial is set to start on the 25th of this month. And in Mombasa, 4 terror suspects will remain in police custody for 10 more days. The anti-terror police arrested them in Majengo area, that's in Likoni, Mombasa County, while they were in their houses. They were allegedly trying to assemble an explosive device when it went off and injured some of them. The case will be heard on the 24th of this month. From the corridor of justice, a stepfather suspected to have mutilated a 6-year-old boy's private parts in Endarasha, Nyeri County last Friday will remain in custody for 7 more days as police continue with investigations. The suspect, George Kariuki, was arraigned at the Nyeri Law Courts after police rescued him from members of the public who were baying for his blood and took him into custody. The court granted the request by the investigating officer to detain him for the 7 days to allow the police time to tighten up the loose ends of the case against him. George Kariuki is accused of chopping off the private parts of his 6-year-old stepchild, accusing him of stealing 50 shillings from their home in Endarasha. He's also said to have forced the boy to cut grass and feed their cows while injured.
Dadi sijachukua pesa. Akamwambia ongea ulishukua pesa. Akamwambia hapana. Ndio alishukua mtoto akampeleka kwa room yake ya mtoto. Akaanza kuchapa mtoto na akamchapa na kaba alafu akamfuruta nini yake asili.
I'm sure the impact will be quite detrimental on his mental well-being. Therefore, after the surgical work, we'll get the hospital counselor to come and have a talk with him.
And to Mombasa now, the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, has slammed his critics who have accused him of arrogance over his tough stance on the implementation of the new competence-based curricula. And as NTV's coast reporter Kevin Mutai now reports, the Ministry of Education has also set aside funds for employment of teacher interns to address the shortage of teachers in various schools.
The Kenya Secondary School Heads Association conference in Mombasa set stage for the talks on the competency-based curriculum. Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha held his line, telling off his critics who have taken issue with his perceived arrogance.
Don't tell me to stop being firm. I shall not listen to you. There are people out there who have decided to demonize my firmness for arrogance. How can a stray boy be arrogant? We were trained to be servant leaders.
What is the infrastructure going to be like? And that is why I want to call upon the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to fast track the release of the designs of this curriculum for junior and senior secondary.
As we go to competence-based curriculum, sports, arts, and performing arts is a pathway, and therefore we must invest in it as a pathway of learning, other than it being co-curricular.
The Ministry of Education now says it will set aside more funds that will be allocated to payment of teacher interns so as to address the shortage of teachers in public schools across the country.
That money is going to be available. It will be available to all schools to empower them, to employ interns.
Kesha also noted the government has not released capitation grants for several students because of the challenges related to implementation of the National Education Management Information System, NEMIS. The teachers also want the Ministry of Interior to release birth certificates to allow registration of students into the portal.
We have challenges in the number of students who are not able to be captured by NEMIS system because of conditions beyond the principal's ability.
Any child that is not on NEMIS, that is unwell and has gone to a treatment center, must and shall be treated as long as there is evidence that that child is a student.
The school heads also proposed the revision of the age of consent from 18 to 21 to help reduce the number of teen pregnancies and address indisciplined cases amongst students. Kevin Mutai, NTV, Mombasa.
Right, firmness for arrogance. Well, I have never seen Professor Magoha smile, but if you have, please tweet us with one of the pictures where he's smiling. Time now for a short break, but coming up, Kenya beats Harvard. We meet the future lawyers already making ripples globally.
Oh, you got me.
And welcome back. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Flora Atieno. Let's move on. And the Interreligious Council of Kenya wants the boundaries review function taken away from the Electoral Commission and instead an ad hoc committee formed 2 years before a pending boundaries review. Led by the former IBC Commissioner Yusuf Nzibo, the religious leaders say the Electoral Commission should only focus on election to ensure their credibility. And as NTV's political affairs reporter Ken Mijungu now reports, the religious group also wants the appointment of IBC commissioners staggered to avoid a scenario where all of them will leave at the same time.
The Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee has been meeting different stakeholders on the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill.
Allow me to request this.
Today, the committee met representatives from religious groups in the country as it seeks to consolidate views and present a report to Parliament.
But I want...
The Religious Council presented a raft of proposals, which it says are key in streamlining the operations of the electoral body. They want the boundary review function separated from election management and assigned to an ad hoc committee, which should be formed 2 years before an impending review. They also proposed a training institute to be set up for all IEBC staff. IEBC officials found to have presided over an election in which electoral offences were committed should also be punished. The voters' register should be cleaned up before the end of the second year after elections, and all election petitions except a presidential petition be terminated at the Court of Appeal within 6 months. They also propose that elections be staggered. They want the election of governors and MCAs to be held on a different day from that of MPs and the president. The 2/3 gender rule should be implemented through a quota system of parties and candidates participating in each general election. They also called on the president to immediately set up a selection panel to fill vacancies at the commission. The council also says the vice chairperson of the commission should have the same qualifications as those of the chairperson.
It would be very sad to have all the commissioners leave at one go. And from our own experience, it takes at least 2 years for a commissioner to understand the work of IEBC.
The religious sector in Kenya welcomes the opportunity to participate in the selection panels and is prepared to support and the process to ensure the process is professional and the outcome is a trusted and credible IEBC.
The IEBC, their mandate is provided for in the Constitution. So if we were to take away some work like you have suggested, and for good reason, we will again have to address ourselves to an amendment to the Constitution.
There are various proposals that are being made with regards to reconstituting the IEBC and also making it working as smooth as possible. But one underlying factor that is constant from all the stakeholders that are appearing before the various parliamentary committees is that this reconstitution needs to be made early so as to make sure that the commission has adequate time to plan for the 2022 elections. Ken Mijungu, NTV at Parliament Buildings.
Well, I think the religious leaders make sense, but it's upon you to judge. And just the other day, we were reporting on hunger and drought in Baringo caused by the long spells of dryness or lack of rain. But tonight we are reporting that over 200 families have been displaced following heavy rains and the resultant flood waters that swept Budalangi Estate, that's in the outskirts of Mariga town last night. The heavy downpour caused River Pekera to swell its bank and burst, bringing a cascade of devastation along its path, as Charity Mwangi now reports.
The heavy rains brought more than just moisture to these once parched lands. The waters rose to unprecedented levels, and when they receded, the destruction was apparent. The frantic attempt to salvage their property is told by the household items strewn outside their homes. But for others, they could only move the valuables onto higher surfaces, if only to preserve them. Their once tidy houses are now murky, covered in water or sludge. They fear if the rains keep beating at them, their efforts to salvage whatever they can will amount to nothing.
TV kila kitu na vyombo hatuna, makaa imeloa, gas imeenda. Hata Sky Plus yenye tulikuwa tunarusha nje kuna vitu mingi imepotea. Hata malazi ni ngumu tutowe.
That the flooding happened so suddenly is unsettling for them. They fear for their lives and for their young. The carcasses of animals swept by the angry waters and littering the town makes the threat more real.
Maji ilituvamia usiku, tunastukia maji imeingia kwa nyumba kama mtoni. Tuko bahari, watoto ndio niko nayo, watoto waine, hakuna vile nitaweza beba.
Tukijaribu kutoka tuokoe vitu tupeleke barabara, tunapata barabara ipitiki. Ni maji tupu. Sasa tulikuwa tunaomba tu Mungu atusaidie.
Businesses were not spared. This petrol station was hard hit as the fuel storage tanks were flooded. Soon it was enveloped by water. Local leaders have called on the government to fix the drainage challenge that faces the area every rainy season.
Tunasema shukrani kwa mvua, lakini mvua inapokuja na kuleta uharibifu ni jambo la kusumbua.
Just last month, the residents here were battling a state of drought and a scarcity that saw well-wishers reach out to them. But there seems to be no middle ground for them as they now have to contend with the season of plenty and the rains that threaten their lives much more than the drought did. For now, they have to seek alternative shelter as their houses are not homes anymore. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
Now, education officials in Mavoko Sub-County are investigating an incident where the parents of Githunguri Primary School, that's in Machakos County, claimed the students were forced to undress by the school administration for wearing the wrong choice of clothes. The parents were at the school today to protest what they say was humiliating treatment to their children, or where their children were subjected to on their way home from school.
Learning was disrupted today at Githunguri Primary School in Mavoko Sub-County for the better part of the day by angry parents who were seeking answers why their children came home without their shoes, vests and innerwear. They were blocked by the gateman but were later allowed into the school compound where they made their way into a room filled with clothes. The parents claimed that the head teacher, identified as John Boro, forced the children to take off the additional clothes they had put on, saying they are not part of the school uniform. The parents say they were not aware of that.
Hatujui kama kuna suruali yenye inakuaga uniform. Saa hii tumeona boxer pale ya blue. Mtoto alikuwa ametolewa aje. Kama kuna uniform ya baika inafaa kutoka kwa serikali. Wangu alikuja bila viatu, vest hakukuwa nayo. Wengine nilikuwa naibika huku Githunguri, tukapatana na wasichana hawana nguo ni fupi, hawana panti, wanaenda kama wameshikilia nguo. Hiyo kitu tumetuudhi sana kama wazazi.
Tulipata mwalimu hapa teacher chana. Wakati tulimpata tukamuuliza ni nini ameendelea. Huyo mwalimu alituambia ni haki yake. Sasa ni haki yake na akaingia kwa gari akatoroka akaenda. Tunataka kuuliza jambo moja. Ni shule gani mwalimu anajaribu kuendeleza mambo ya kimasomo kama anaangalia wasichana kwa matiti, anaangalia kwa miguu?
The parents accuse the head teacher of sending the students home even for minor offenses.
Mtoto kama hako na mavazi mazuri ya shuleni, angefanyaje? Angeniandikia barua ama angenitumania ama angenipigia simu nikuje shuleni tuje tukasuluhisha mambo ya shule, lakini siku nivulia mtoto nguo.
Education officers from Mavoko Sub-County say they will look into the parents' grievances and take action if necessary within 2 weeks. Helen Wanjohi, NTV.
Anglican Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit now insists church leaders should not allow politicians to misuse the pulpit by engaging in politics. Sapit also asked politicians to respect the church. The Archbishop was speaking in Limuru, where he had a meeting with the leadership of the Anglican churches in Kiambu County.
We are not going to open up the pulpit to be the place where we do politics. If we have to meet Christians and greet, let us do it outside of the churches. So every worship hour, let it be a worship hour, so that what we hear that time is a word of God, not political rhetoric. And we are addressing all political divide, not one side or the other side, but we are saying all of them, let us go to churches to worship.
Now, 3 students from Kenya's Strathmore University School of Law emerged the first African team to win the John Jackson Moot Court on World Trade Organization law. Now, the 3 made history by beating the Harvard Law School in the final of the competition to be first African team being awarded home. Anita Nkonge tells us more.
History was made by Strathmore University's law school when they went head-to-head with some of the world's most prestigious law schools and won. So I'm here to find out just what it took to battle some of the world's most brilliant minds and win.
My job in Strathmore has been very simple. Has been to inspire and to select. To try to select the right people as staff and students, because the process of selection is very tough. Only around 30 or 35% of the applicants make it. And then to inspire them and let them do.
The 17th edition of the prestigious John H. Jackson Moot Court Award went to Strathmore Law School team Michael Musili Wambua, Maliha Kandwala and Catherine Penda, who made history by becoming the first African team to take home the prestigious award. The competition, held in Geneva, Switzerland, specialized in the field of World Trade Organization law and is a student-run moot court organized annually by the European Law Students Association. Christian Vidal, Leon and Harrison Bori were the coaches for Strathmore University.
Law in the US is a graduate degree, meaning you have to do an undergrad degree before you do law. What we are training here is an undergraduate students. So the students we defeated from Harvard are actually graduate students. So that's the impressive part of it.
The students took 10 months to prepare for the competition, juggling schoolwork at the same time.
It's the biggest risk I've taken, at least on my part, but by far the most rewarding.
So I had to ask, how did it feel like competing against the world's most prestigious universities?
Surreal, to be honest. But weirdly enough, when we got into that room, we didn't know the difference between us and these big schools, if I quote unquote.
Putting not only Strathmore and Kenya on the map, but Africa as a whole, it then begs the question on whether tertiary education is in fact facing challenges in quality.
I was among those people who are cynical about education locally. I think there's a lot of opportunity locally. Perhaps what we may lack is resources.
We complain a lot about education, about legal education, universities are very bad. I think it's not true. Sometimes universities are not up to standards because the students are so good that we may let them down.
There's not any reason why anyone who's concerned or is cynical about university education in this country should think that we can't do it. At least we have demonstrated that it's possible.
Anita Nkonge, NTV.
And still ahead on NTV Tonight.
SRC should not tell Kenyans that they are concerned about the wage bill.
Members of Parliament and Senate, the setting of their remuneration and benefits is the exclusive responsibility of SRC.
Do you think SRC needs to buy a new vehicle for 99 million? Why are we not holding all the agencies to account?
SRC cannot purport to say that some can enjoy house allowance benefits while others will not.
The CSS and PSS do not get a house allowance.
We've sacrificed so much, we've let so much go for the sake of serving the people of Kenya.
It is time to get down to business. Welcome, I am Julians Amboko. The National Assembly has approved an 80.6 billion shillings increment in the overall expenditure for the financial year 2018-2019, just 19 days before the end of the said period. Through the second supplementary budget estimates tabled before the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the August House has endorsed a 79.3 billion shillings increment in recurrent expenditure and a 1.2 billion shillings for development expenditure. This will partly aid in paying the government suppliers as directed by the President. However, the move reverses the reduction of the budget deficit, which was endorsed with the first supplementary budget, which scaled down planned expenditure by 48 billion shillings.
Mr. Speaker, is a payment of pending bills, which I'm sure is going to do a lot in terms of rejuvenating the economy, the circulation of money. There are a number of people who supplied goods and services to government, and I really want to thank the President for his directive that these pending bills be paid before the end of this financial year.
The Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honourable Speaker, is concerned that multiple supplementary budgets in a single year tend to weaken the fiscal position of a government and undermine the credibility of the budgeting process, as government policies are likely to end up being poorly implemented or completely abandoned along the way. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, international best practice discourages multiple supplementary budgets within a single financial year, especially where the proposed expenditures were foreseeable and could have been included in the budget.
And staying with the budget, many great development plans have been made. Many huge announcements have been pronounced. Trillions in shillings worth of debt have been taken up to fund these grand plans. After all the pledges and promises of better lives, many Wananchi say they are feeling everything but the benefits of the government's plans. In less than 72 hours, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich will be unveiling the spending plan for the financial year 2019-2020. NTV's Lillian Kiarie talked to low-income earners who, like many others in the past years, hope that the budget will spell hope for their plight.
Taxes iko juu kabisa inatuumiza. Hata wananchi unaona kama huku si ati pesa wako nayo wakose kukula hiki kitu ama ile metura na wekelea hapo. Hizi vitu unaona.
Meat has been his bread and butter for the last 20 years. At his butchery at Kahawa 44, Nairobi County, the space where he used to stock meat sits empty, echoing the reality of the high cost of living, which has cut down his trade to less prime meat.
Kama hii sasa nikilipisha mtu wanaita analalamika hata inafaa kuwa 200. Wameweka kodi juu, sasa utafanya mtu nini? Hii nyumba nalipa 12,000 kutoka pale mpaka hapa. Nalipa mwenyewe. Chakula wajaribu kupunguza. Petroli ijaribu kupunguzwa.
Mwangi's frustration is partly founded on his struggle, juxtaposed with the lavish lifestyle of corrupt government officials.
Ni mshahara yao wanaongeza kubwa, unasikia kesho wameongeza mshahara, kesho wameongeza mshahara.
The 2019-2020 budget is set to be read this Thursday, the 13th of June. And looking at the estimates, we can see that a huge chunk of the money is set to go to paying the wage bill, repaying the debt, and also funding the Big Four agenda. But with the inflation cost really high this year, Mwananchi can only hope that this budget eases their cost of living.
Last year, the import duty on iron ore and steel was increased. For Jua Kali artisan Nganga Kimani, the operation costs went up while the ease of doing business went down.
Kuna kitu imepungua. Hasa alafu watu wa Jua Kali kama ni wenye tunachumeanga wenye magari wanalia chuma zimefungwa za second hand.
The noise from his metalwork quickly meets the smoke and smell of Gladys McKenna's roadside French fries or chips. Like others, the mother of three is singing the Tough Tides melody.
Tuseme kama nimenunua warungu 100. So mafuta na kuni naweza tumia 300. Pande kama waru ziko.
Her house rent is 4,500 shillings a month. Would she contribute to the housing levy?
Hiyo sasa tutawapea from where? Nikiangalia budget income yangu na ile nina spend pande
alafu tena nipatie serikali, si unaona itakuwa ngumu, maisha itakuwa mzito kwangu. Bwana yangu alikufa kitambo.
34-year-old Mary Muthoni, a single mother of 3, says that despite tightening her belt, she can barely make ends meet.
Mfanyikazi wangu wa nyumba na mlipanga 6,000 kwa mwezi. Haya, nyumba nalipa 14. Haya, tuseme watoto wangu wanakulanga kwa siku tuseme 1,000.
Different Kenyans, same narrative, a bleak one that paints struggle. Will this change in the next financial year? Lillian Kiarie, NTV.
And away from the budget now, let's paint a picture. You order for a plate of food and pay for it in full before it is served. The waiter brings it and demands that you eat all of it within, let's say, 12 minutes. And if you have any left over, you lose it, whether you are hungry or not. If you want the remaining food, which you had paid for, by the way, you have to buy another plate at the same price and quantity. Now, this is the situation with data bundles as offered by some mobile service providers. Victor Kiprop spoke to former Kiambu Governor William Kabogo, who told him of his plans to go to court, seeking to bar telcos from expiring data bundles, as he called them, thieves.
Why do you sell me bundles and you give me time of when I should I should use my phone?
A question that many Kenyans are keen to hear telecommunication companies respond to, and a situation that has former Kiambu Governor William Kabogo saying he will go to court to seek reprieve on. Kabogo says telecommunication firms are stealing from Kenyans by expiring their data bundles before they are utilized.
Why would they sell us bundle and tell us it expires? Yeah? If I go to the shop to buy a unga and you give me a bundle of unga, why would you want to tell me that at some point it will expire? I know. When I was buying, I know. If I want to eat unga with weevils, I will eat because it's mine.
In some scenarios, one has a fixed duration to completely use their data bundle or lose what is left of it. To activate the remaining data, they would need to buy an equivalent amount as the previous purchase. But in the case expected in court in the next 2 weeks, Kabogo argues that if data bundles must have an expiry date, then they should at least have an option for renewal.
I have bought, it is mine. If you want to tell me it expires, then allow me, if I want to reload 100 shillings, it revives the old one. Why does it expire and go where?
In South Africa, new regulations which took effect in March allow users to roll over unused data before the date of expiry or transfer the data to someone else on the same network before they expire.
Kenyans are being robbed unaware. When you pay 1,000, you should use 1,000. And if it doesn't expire within the month, they should renew it when you add a little more money.
Expiry timelines push consumers to spend more money on purchasing a new data bundle with a longer usage period. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business.
Quite an interesting discussion there. Elsewhere, consumers will begin paying a refundable deposit for every first purchase of liquefied petroleum gas cylinders in a move aimed at ensuring loyalty towards established LPG operators. The Energy, Petroleum and Regulatory Authority has introduced a raft of regulations aimed at keeping rogue businessmen out of the LPG trade. Here's Alex Mwangi with EPRA's proposed regulations.
Technocrats at the Energy, Petroleum and Regulatory Authority, formerly the Energy Regulatory Commission, have in recent years been mulling over ways of increasing the uptake of LPG in the country.
LPG is a cleaner alternative to charcoal and wood that is currently being used today. And it offers a route for far better health for Kenyans, reducing infant mortality and child mortality.
Reforms that brought about the introduction of a universal valve made it possible to swap cylinders much more easily. However, they inadvertently created additional challenges for the industry.
Approximately 90% of all cylinders owned by major licensed LPG marketers were never returned. They remained in the parallel market, continuously being illegally refilled and resold to the undiscerning consumer.
The EPRA, with the backing of the Petroleum Institute of East Africa (PIEA), is seeking to introduce a refundable deposit to be paid by consumers when they purchase an LPG cylinder for the first time. EPRA has tasked brand owners, which are largely oil marketers, with ensuring that LPG cylinders are insured such that in case the cylinder malfunctions, the consumer gets compensated. Brand owners have also been tasked with tracking cylinders from the filling plant to the retail shop. EPRA has also introduced the concept of LPG reticulation, through which investors in real estate can get approvals to construct bulk LPG storage facilities and thereafter distribute to the housing units via a network of pipes.
Consequently, the unit LPG cost will in the medium term, significantly reduce, enhancing affordability and consumption. So, again, there are plans to move that direction where LPG price will be regulated. But as of now, it's being driven by demand and supply.
Alex Mwangi, NTV.
And that report by Alex Mwangi wraps up the Business Bulletin tonight. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.
A very good evening to you. I'm Sean Carter-Villis with the latest sports news. Now, substitute Jim Rood headed home a stoppage time winner as the Netherlands finally broke down New Zealand's defence to emerge with a 1-0 victory as both countries began their Women's World Cup finals campaign. The European champions had numerous attempts at goal in a match marked by a myriad of... May have hinted on a defensive form of play at the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt, following the final squad he named that is a blend of youth and experience. 4 players, the Sweden-based winger Christopher Mbamba, the experienced Anthony Okumu, Clifton Miheso and Brian Mandela were axed from the initial 27-man squad.
Road to AFCON 2019 in association with GoTV.
Just as was the case when Harambee Stars coach Sebastian Minye named the original 27-man squad, there is a lot of chatter following the announcement of the final 23-man squad that will fly Kenya's flag at the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations.
I know there's been a lot of hue and cry from some quarters about the players that the coach has dropped and everything, but all said and done, I think we need to respect the coach's decision. Whatever happens now in Cairo, I think the team now needs a lot of support from a lot of Kenyans. And then let us see what happens after the Cup of Nations. I mean, that is the time now to know where did we go wrong, what could we have done better. It's always analysis.
Injuries have seen Sweden-based winger Christopher Mbamba and South Africa-based Brian Mandela get dropped, while Portugal-based winger Clifton Miheso and experienced defender Anthony Okumu were deemed surplus to Minye's plans.
The players that maybe he left behind in his mind, I think he has a game plan. Every coach has his own philosophy, and I think he's just looking at how he wants to play, the tactics he's going to use. So maybe the players that did not go and maybe were fit, they were not fitting in his team tactics on his game plan.
In his squad, Minye has included Musa Mohamed, who picked up a knock in Kenya's first friendly match against Madagascar on Friday, as well as Aboud Omar, who limped off late in the match. This points to possibility of a new defensive partnership, and in his list of options is youngster Joseph Okumu, Joash Onyango and David Owino.
He's looking at a position where he can be able maybe to pack the players, defensive play when we don't have the ball. In terms of attack, I don't think that we normally go really outright to attack. So I think a little bit more defensive when we don't have the ball, and then if we can score one goal, I don't think the opponents can score a goal. So looking at it, for me, I would think that he will have more of a packed midfield.
According to Jacob Ghost Mule, who was the last coach to take Harambee Stars to AFCON, Minye is casting his focus far and wide.
We have experienced versus a future. Some of the players are young, and I think he's not only thinking about the Cup of Nations, he's thinking after Cup of Nations, what next? So I think it's a team that can stay together for the next maybe 4 years and give good results.
The team is preparing for their final pre-AFCON friendly match against Democratic Republic of Congo, which will be played on Saturday in Madrid, Spain, before traveling to Egypt on the 19th, 5 days before their opening match of the tournament against Algeria. Brian Otwal, NTV Sports.
Road to AFCON 2019 in association with GoTV.
Experience the unforgettable with the Total Africa Cup of Nations with Super Sport on GoTV. GoTV, live it, love it. Proudly brought to you by Bettin.
All right, on to basketball, and fans in Toronto expressed their hopes for Game 6 of the NBA Finals after the Toronto Raptors were defeated by the Golden State Warriors 106-105 in Game 5 on Monday. This as both coaches expressed themselves on the tight game won by half a basket. Tony Parker is retiring from basketball after 18 seasons and 4 NBA championships. The 37-year-old point guard hoped to play 20 seasons with San Antonio, joining Kobe Bryant and Dirk Nowitzki as the only players selected. Start of the Rugby World Cup, which will be hosted by Japan in 12 venues, stretching the length of the country in the competition, which kicks off on the 20th of September in Tokyo. Tokyo Stadium will host the opening ceremony and the first match between the Japan and Russia. The nearby 72,000 capacity International Stadium Yokohama, which also hosted the 2002 Football World Cup. After winning the competition in 2011 and 2015. The All Blacks sit top of the world rankings with Wales in second and Ireland in third. The host nation Japan is currently ranked 11th. Africa will be represented by Namibia and South Africa. Back to you, Ken.
And that's all we had for you on NTV Tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to Flora Tien, our sign language interpreter tonight. But straight after this, it's Sidebar, and tonight we're talking SRC versus the members of parliament. And already seated with me here is Cyprian Nyamamu. We have legislator also seated, Peter Kaluma, coming back this week to speak to us, Mark Bichache, and of course we have a lady here, Irene Otieno, who is also joining us to speak about the SRC versus the members of parliament. Who will remain standing? That coming up after this break. Stay with us.